Let me bring in Mitch Lucas and let him get on to this. And then, Mitch, how you doing there? Let me turn this off. We've got something over top of our heads over here.
Well, I'm good. I just escaped from the Firefly Funhouse. I'm sorry, I couldn't resist. But I will say this. I've been listening. Since Tim Horner, I'll use Tim Horner as an example since Tim Horner chimed in a minute ago. I was told by Tommy Rich and Bob Armstrong one time that wrestling is a morality play. And if you don't have good and bad, if you don't have good and evil, it does not work. And I think that is a lot of problem of today's product is there's too much gray. There's not enough white and black. Now, since I'm your Continental guy, I'll use an example from Continental, and I'll be brief. But if you think back to '86 when Tim Horner and Roy Lee Welch were wrestling for the U.S. Junior title like it was the World Heavyweight Championship, every program meant something. If you went to the house shows, you wanted to see Roy Lee Welch get his butt whooped. If I can just be quite frank, Roy Lee Welch was the clear-cut heel in the feud. He stole the belt. He didn't win it. He put it in his bag in the locker room. If you remember Tim Horner going into the locker room to go get the belt, and one of the greatest moments in Continental that I remember. But Tim Horner was the clear-cut good guy. Roy Lee Welch was the clear-cut bad guy. And when I was there at those house shows, when I watched TV and I heard the reaction that Tim Horner was getting, it wasn't like half the crowd was rooting for Roy Lee Welch. It was about 100% for Tim Horner and 100% against Roy Lee Welch. To me, when wrestling lost its way a little bit back in the 90s is when everybody cheated. There was no clear-cut face, no clear-cut heel. And that's how I think we kind of lost our way and got down the wrong path.
I agree with you. I agree. Let me get some people here. Paul Hatchett, if all three people in the ring, referee and wrestlers, do their job, it'll get over. And fans come back. Without fans, wrestling is nothing. You are correct. There has been, we have told this and told wrestlers over and over again in our lifetimes, without those people sitting in that crowd, you are nothing. And I think it does help to be a wrestling fan first before you get into wrestling business, before you're a wrestler, because if not, you really don't understand the wrestling business. You don't understand why I'm doing this to do this. Now, don't get me wrong. If you're a WWE wrestler, I'm telling you, you're just doing what you're told, and we understand. But if you're on an independent level, you really need to go back, watch old wrestling tapes, and do it that way first. Learn how to do it that way first. And then when you get to WWE, it doesn't matter because you're going to spend 3 years in the developmental place anyway. So they're going to reteach you everything, but at least you'll know the basics of wrestling. And if you want to be taught how to wrestle good, Tom Pritchard has a school, and that's where you need to go to learn professional wrestling because there's no doubt he can do that. Let me ask Jack this question, and is there a time in WWE today, and I don't keep up with it as much as Jack does, but can they get heat on television now?
They can, but it's not like what we used to do. And that's because wrestling in general, not just WWE, I'm not pointing finger at them, but wrestling in general has turned to the cool heels. You know, I really think that started with WCW and the NWO. That was cool. It was. I bought into it too. But I think we lost that element along the way. And I think that's one thing that's really missing.
We used to tell Paulie Dangerously when he was in Continental, we'd say the heat you're trying to get is the wrong kind of heat. Anyone can get that heat, which was called cheap heat. Yeah. Cheap heat is getting on the mic, and I've seen this done on a lot of independent levels, and get on there and say, "You rednecks." Well, anybody can say that.
Yeah.
Now let us show you how to get that heat in the match. without calling anybody any names. And you won't really and truly, a heel wants everyone to love them. They're doing nothing wrong. A true heel does not believe he's done anything wrong. Everything he did because he had to do it.
A true heel is justified in his action.
Yes.
Your daddy told me that.
and that's the way it should always be. If you cheat, you need to run out of there like you have stole the keys to your grandma's car and you're going to go and leave somewhere. If you've cheated in that match, you need to leave that match right then and there. Don't wait for it. You know, you wouldn't steal something at a store and just stay around outside. You would leave, and that's the way we you know. Dad always said, "Listen, tonight you're going to do the deal. We're going to take the belt off of you. But when you hit that, whatever you do, you get out of there because I want you to run out of that building." And I think that's a lost thing now. People cheat and they'll stay there for the next 25 minutes, and everybody's got to go to that second or top rope.
Yeah.
I'd outlaw that. The first time, if I was in WWE, I said, not one person goes to that except for the 2 or 3 people we tell to do it, because it's done every match. Every match it is done. And at least once they're going to do a flying out of the ring onto somebody. At least once in every match they're going to do it. I'm getting a little behind on people really quick. Let me try to pick up on the people here. I remember Norvell Austin working back in the 70s, Knoxville. He could walk out with some heat with Don Carson. Well, Don Carson was a heat getter. Did y'all ever get to see him?
Yeah,
a little bit.
Saw some tapes. I never saw him in person.
He could get heat not only for the fans, but the wrestlers as well. No, Don was a good guy. I have to say Don was a good guy. He was from our hometown here. What Goldberg got beat by Braun Strowman. Oh, that's right. He did win that. He did win that, whatever that title is he has. I think that he got 45 titles in WWE now.
It seems like it.
I mean, everybody's got a championship, but you can't say nothing. Continental had a championship from top to bottom. If you remember, there was an Alabama champion, Southeastern champion, junior champion, front row champion. There was a bunch of champions there as well. So you can't really say nothing about that. Were other bad guys like Freddie Blassie? People wanted to stab them, and old ladies would hit them with loaded purses. Yes, I've seen that happen in Chattanooga, Tennessee, actually. Bill Dundee got hit by one. Tojo Yamamoto actually got knocked out by one in Chattanooga Memorial Auditorium.
I had a couple of grannies throw punches at me, too. So,
Well, hey, they got into wrestling. And it's funny because they were the same people. I remember in Chattanooga, when Tojo knocked that lady out, I was probably about 8 years old. And I can remember when he got knocked out, the lady said, "I don't want to not come back." They said, Nick Goulas, he wasn't going to give up that because they wasn't really doing good business then anyway. But she actually had a big old brick in that thing and knocked out Tojo Yamamoto. Let's see. North Georgia Wrestling Alliance. Best examples of justification for a hero, I thought, was the Freebirds versus Divine Erichs. That is true because everything they said, and that's true. Let's talk about that just for a second. Tim Horner was talking about Don Carson. He would get some heat, and Tim should know because he watched him in Knoxville, Tennessee. Don Carson was something else. Let me go back. Let's go back to the Freebird thing. Peanut butter. Do you know what he's talking about?
No.
You don't have to explain that, Tim. You're either going to have to come on here and talk to us one night. I'll have to explain that one somewhere down the line. I don't think none of us really know what that means, but only you know what that means. Let's go back to this right for a minute and talk about the Freebirds. They did believe they were justified in what they did.
Yes.
And I think that was the thing. The superstar thought he was justified. When he came to Atlanta, he thought he was justified. You know what? And the guys believed it. That was the thing. They believed what they were doing. You can tell the guys today, they don't particularly believe in what they're doing. The guys back there would believe in what they were doing, especially Superstar Wrestling 2. The reason they believed it because they would beat each other really bad during the match. I remember Wrestling 2 telling us, man, I had a hard time getting up the next day. I mean, that's how believable they were watching. And Charlie Platt, hello. Thank you so much.
All right.
Charlie Platt, the voice of Southeastern Championship Wrestling, also the Continental Wrestling Federation in 1980. I think he came back in 88.
88 and 89.
Oh, Stephanie Wood said Carson had a loaded glove. He would call peanut butter.
I got you.
Now that makes more sense. Well, I thought it was. I didn't know what that was. I didn't know what that meant. Larry Bebop Hatchcock. I like a cheap plug, Jack Lord.
Okay, Bebop is one of the cheapest people I know. There you go.
There you go, Larry. Yeah. At least he said, there you go. Tim said the glove Don Carson wore, he called it peanut butter. You know, Don Carson was so great. He'd get beat, and he's about like Don and Ron Wright. They'd get beat every week, but they'd get Don Carson come up there and say, well, last week there, that auditorium, I beat that man so bad. And then the announcer would say, man, you didn't beat him. Yes, I did. He would lie and lie and lie. Don Carson was a good wrestler. Charlie Platt let us know that peanut butter was the loaded glove as well. You know, I want to talk a little bit as well. We've talked about let's talk about the booker for just a second, and how important the booker was in the process of either making the product great or making it not so great. And there has been a lot of, and sometimes maybe not always the booker's fault. Maybe he didn't have the talent that he wanted, because every booker would bring their own talent in. It wasn't like if Jack is going down to Center, Alabama to book a place, and there's other talent there. Jack, you're going to bring your own guys. Am I correct?
Yeah. Yeah, because I have turned down a lot of opportunities simply because the promoter said, no, I've got guys. I don't need you to bring your guys. Without my guys, my booking abilities are so limited that it's not worth my time going down and doing it. So,
because when Bill Dundee was brought to Mid-South Wrestling, when he was brought at that time to Mid-South Wrestling, Jerry Jarrett said, listen, I'm going to give you the Rock and Roll Express. I'm going to send you the Midnight Express, Terry Taylor, a couple of other guys. I think Buddy Landell, he may have already been there. I'm not for sure. But the people that he sent said, listen, you won't know what to do with them because you're only used to using big guys. So we need to be able to get them to be able to do something. So they brought Bill Dundee with them. And then Bill Dundee started bringing all his people, trying to get rid of, for a long time, he tried to get rid of the Junkyard Dog. And he was glad when he left, because you couldn't do anything there. Any kind of heat you would get, everybody hired Junkyard Dog, JYD. So you couldn't get anyone else over, because if Junkyard Dog didn't come out there to save someone, they were let down by it. They wanted to see Junkyard Dog be the big savior. And so he was glad when he left. But booking can get a little bit, if you ain't careful, and we've seen it happen, booking can get to where you do the same thing over and over and over again. And we've seen that before in professional wrestling.
Wrestling is only as good as its story. If it matches for the sake of matches does not work.
No. Let's. What gets me is finishers being used more than once in a match. Finishers is just a finisher. I agree with you, but that did start way back in the NWA. People would use their finishes as a high spot, and that should never be done. And other people would be using their finishes in the matches. I remember Scott Armstrong had the super kick, and the next thing you know, there'd be 3 other matches use the super kick as a high spot. So that was done. That is a booker's problem, and that somebody's got to do that. Israel said Ron Wright had his loaded boot. Yes, I remember that. Late Percy Pringle was also a great one for getting heat, not only as Pringle, but as it's went blank with me. What was his other gimmick there for Paul Bearer?
Paul Bearer. Yeah.
Hello, gentlemen. Kenneth Hopkins. Hello, Kenneth. Thank you for being on here.
Hey, Ken.
Let's see. Susan Renee talked about the thump. I believe that was that when we were talking about
JYD.
Junkyard Dog. Donovan Graham, J.C. Dykes, and his Yankees caused riots in the South. Not only was it the Yankees, but the Dominoes, the Infernos. I am actually, my middle name is Dykes. I was named after J.C. Dykes. J.C. Dykes is the person who started my father in the wrestling business. My dad started in 1962. He was helping put up the ring with J.C. Dykes. A wrestler didn't show up. And so when he didn't show up, they needed a referee. Dad was there. He was not smart when he started. He did not know. They did not tell him anything about the wrestling business. He got in there and refereed. And from that point on, from 1962 at 14 years old until I think it was 1996, 33 years, my dad was in professional wrestling. And he spent a long time in it. And because Jimmy did get him started when I was born in 1970, he called me Brent Dykes West. So Jimmy Dykes, he was he had a bunch of stuff at one time we were supposed to go pick up, but we never picked up. There was actually a loaded boot, and it was actually made, and there was a little piece that would go back and forth. Actually, when they would hit it, they actually had a loaded boot. And so he threw it in the garbage. We could have had that loaded boot. Let's see. Hey, guys, and not everyone is a superstar. A finisher should end the match. William Riley, I agree with you. We'll go with one more. Get back to heel and baby faces. Nobody really can tell who your heels really are. They don't keep a good heel strong anymore. Let me ask you this. I'm going to ask this question because Mitch was talking about it. Is it possible with sponsors to get heat? Will they get mad if people really get mad today? Will the sponsors get mad at Vince?
I guess it depends on how far you push it. That's ironic that we're talking about this after what I watched last night. Do you remember the Clash of Champions when they filmed Terry Funk supposedly in the hospital in Alexandria, Louisiana, and he waved his finger at the crowd and said, "Don't you turn your dial off WTBS because I'm going to be there later tonight in the Clash." And he came out and put a plastic bag over Ric Flair's head, if you remember that, and tied it off. And they they went to commercial, came back. The medics were down there like they were giving CPR to Ric Flair, trying to revive him and whatnot as the program went off. And on the next WCW, back then it was not WCW Saturday Night. It was still World Championship Wrestling, the program. But Terry Funk actually issued a brief apology during a promo and said something to the effect of, "Don't you kids ever do anything like I went too far. Don't do that." But I think you can still get away with it without absolutely going over the top. I think there's ways to do that. One popular way right now, and I'll say this, and I'll get out of the way for you guys, but one popular way right now to get heat seems to be to you were talking a little bit ago about it. There's always a dive move in the WWE. There's always somebody jumping out on somebody else on the announce table or whatever. Almost every big pay-per-view now, they have somebody take a big, huge fall. In WrestleMania with Kevin Owens jumping off the sign. They've done it with Jeff Hardy numerous times. If you break anybody on top of anything, apparently that gets heat. I'm not really sure that you can get it in the old school way anymore. Without the advertising. That's a good question.
What do you think, Jack? Can
I don't know. Advertisers are fickle. If y'all remember when Daniel Bryan was first getting his push up there, what was that? Nexus, was that the group they had, I think? And he choked the ring announcer with his own tie. Mm-hmm. And sponsors went crazy. And Vince wound up firing him over. I mean, something that we would have done on every show was suddenly something you get fired over, and so
maybe they don't get the heat today because without the sponsors, they're not in business. Yeah. Let's just be honest with ourselves.
Yeah, and it kind of surprises me too that they've started using adult language on WWE now, which I'm not a fan of. I also understand I'm not the demographic they're looking for, but to me, if I were Snickers, I wouldn't be happy with that.
No.
Because honestly, adults are going to eat Snickers, but I still think kids are your target audience for some of those spots.
Yeah, I agree.
And so I don't know. That's me. Like I say though, I'm not the target audience. So.
Tim Horner said, when I was an agent producer at WWE, I told some talent then that they couldn't have been in the business 20 years ago. There was times I met the wrestler I was working with in the ring, couldn't talk about your match before. They looked at me like I had two heads. That was the art of the business. We found that. I found that, and I would have. I don't know how long ago it was now that I did a wrestling show, the last wrestling show I did, but they would look at you basically and say, just like Tim Horner said, we would tell them, say, listen, a guy was doing some kicks, and I went to him and I said, listen, just don't kick. Just don't do it. They look horrible. Don't do it. Well, everybody knows the wrestling business is a work. And I'm thinking, but you know what? Everybody knows that Superman is too. But if you saw the lines on top of him when he was flying, you wouldn't want to go buy a ticket to see that. Yeah, I understand that, but I don't want to make a bad B movie. And I think what he's saying is true. They want to go through every move that they do. Well, if it's not working, then the fans is just going to sit there and they're going to start hurling boring. I don't care if you do 45,000 spots in that match. I don't care what you do. If you're not telling a story out there, Rocket Monroe set me down one time, and I thought I knew the wrestling business. I was a young kid. I was from 76 to so on. I knew about what was going on in the wrestling. I thought I knew until Rocket Monroe set me down and told me about the wrestling business. And that was one smart man. So why don't you listen to the older guys? They'll be able to teach you something. And then the next guy will teach you something else. And the next guy will teach you something else. So if you're a professional wrestler out there, listen, watch tapes, learn the wrestling business. Because if you'll learn it, it can be good to you. You can make some money at it. Yeah, one of the day you may get to the WWE. Now, you're going to have to work different when you get there because you're going to be told everything to do. From the time you step outside your motel room, you're going to be told what to do. Let's see some other people. Michael Shea Crosby said, Skandar Akbar with Kamala burning hacksaw in Mississippi. Yes, we were there. That got some great heat. James Meek said, it's not wrestling anymore. It's sports entertainment. I wish wrestling was like it when I was a kid. 10,000 people in the Memorial Auditorium in Chattanooga to see Randy Savage versus Dutch Mantel. I think that was at the UTC Arena, right? Was that where that was? Not the Memorial Tour. The Fargo's back to the Nashville Fairgrounds, and also Nick Goulas back in the 70s. They would run on a Thursday, come right back on a Saturday, and run and sell out both shows. So wrestling was bigger back in the 70s and 80s, and maybe even in the 60s, because I think in the 60s when they used to run Thursdays, and Dad, we used to talk about that. We're going to do a couple more, and then we're going to have to get off of here, but I'm a little behind on here. Todd Mayo, the problem, one of many, is the boys do not have the territories to hone their craft and learn their ring psychology.
I agree.
That is true. I don't know if they know what ring psychology is, and we will have to talk about ring psychology and what it really means. Also, the booking of the psychology, because the booking has something to do with psychology as well. Because if you do something on 1, 2, and 3, and a guy chokes a guy down and beats a guy and gets disqualified, well, when you do that on week 8 with the guy that you're really wanting to draw the money with, he's choking the guy and he's showing the guy. By that time, the people should be standing, because you have built that he will choke the guy until he's down and out. He don't care if he gets disqualified or not. So you build to disqualification match, which we're going to have to go through a whole show of that, because I'm not for sure even the big companies that understand the psychology when it comes to building something. Now, Pat Patterson did, Terry Garvin did, those guys did, but I don't think the writers of today, I don't think they get that. Tim Truitt, when I was coming through the ranks, you didn't do what other matches did. You always did something different. That is true. You did not do the same matches, and today you do see the same matches over and over again. I remember Homer Odell had good. He was a manager back in the 70s. Did y'all see Homer Odell?
No, I never got to see.
Did you ever see him? He had the helmet. He had used that helmet and hit people with it. Homer Odell was great. too many of the dives out, too many dives outside the ring. Yes, too many dives outside the ring. If I was in WWE, I'd tell them, don't do that. Don't do that unless we tell you to do that. That should only be certain people doing it, and it shouldn't be every match. I mean, because what happens if you do everything in one night? What do people look forward to? I mean, there's no reason to watch the show each week because they're going to do the same moves in the same wrestling match each and every week. So Cheryl Weather Knox, hi Brent West. Hi Cheryl, how are you doing? Cheryl Weathers' father, Tommy Weathers, one of the greatest referees in professional wrestling.
Love Tommy.
Yeah, Tommy was a great guy. One of the best guys and one of the best referees in the business. Knew the business, understood the business, and understood how the business worked. Susan Renee, you have to make them believe it. Even if it's just time, the match is going on, make them believe it. Yes, I think if they would do that, I truly believe if they would make people believe it, I believe it would go from the 800,000 to the 3 or 4 million. Don't do stupid stuff because wrestling fans are not stupid, and they're not even going to watch something free. Time is as important as money, and I don't think they're going to watch something. Give them a storyline. And without Jim Barnett, WWF would have never gotten to the place they were at. Jim Barnett's the one that helped them get to there because he knew all the territories, how they worked, the way they worked, and he knew the players and who the players was and how to work them against each other. Jim Barnett, no matter what, he doesn't get any credit for that because Vince is going to take it all. But Jim Barnett is the one that knew all the wrestling promoters, and he knew how to put them down. That's just, he knew how to do it. Terry said, I'm sorry, but when I was coming up, I was told it's not about you and me. It's about those people that I think he's been paid to see us, and I still preach it. Yes, it is about the wrestling fan, and if something's not getting over, change it. Don't keep on doing it. Don't beat a dead horse. Just get rid of it. To take the guy from the third match, put him in the main event, especially if the guy in the main event's not drawing you any money. I don't care if he's your best friend or he's your brother-in-law or he's your brother. Get rid of him, put him in the first match, let him sell popcorn, but just don't leave him on the main event. Cheryl Weathers Knox, do you remember when we had a wrestling ring in the backyard? Yes, I do remember the wrestling ring in the backyard. We used to have some great matches, and Cheryl would always beat us. We never won a match. We always did the job for Cheryl. There's no doubt about that. But yeah, they used to have a wrestling ring in the back of their house, so we used to go down there and wrestle all the time. We used to have backyard wrestling matches. I mean, so many backyard wrestling matches. And me and my brother would always, the Andersons was our big deal. And once we got your arm, you were done. You were not going to win. Let me get through these real fast. Do you think masked wrestlers will make a comeback?
They could.
Yeah.
They could.
I think they're,
one of the most popular masked wrestlers out there. I think if they're marketed right, and I think there's a lot of mismarketing opportunities by not having.
James Meek says they're running out of ideals. Do you think that's it? Do you think they're running out of ideals?
Well, here's the thing, and it's wrestling has always been recycled ideas. It's just tweaking them, changing them a little bit. There's still plenty of original ideas. I think they're just getting lazy, and that when they recycle now, they're not tweaking. They're just flat. I'm waiting for them to redo the Randy Savage Elizabeth marriage deal again at some point. And not just do that digitally, insert different people's faces on the tape to make it easier.
It's funny because really, when you think about that, there's so much stuff that happened in the wrestling business, great angles, great programs from the 60s and 70s that they're missing out on that could be redone, that could draw them a ton of money. But there's nobody there.
Because I'm still doing them, so y'all.
Yeah, okay, well, all right. Mitch, the proposal we sent out to Vince, we're just going to have to take that back down.
All right, we'll just go back to the drawing board.
We'll go back to the drawing board. We'll just try to do us a television program on Netflix. Just like Hollywood today, remake. They need writers who know wrestling. I agree. I think they need to start looking at old Florida, Memphis, and Mid-South shows. Yes, they do. But
they got
Memphis,
libraries.
Now they don't own Memphis's.
That's right. That's right.
I don't think they have. I know they
No,
have the
I think
mid-south.
Continental and Memphis and Oregon are the three big ones that they don't own.
And I think doesn't Jarrett have a called Jarrett Parsons TV or something now?
Yeah.
That you can watch something on. Stuart Bailey, a lot of wrestlers now are interchangeable. Same look, same style, same type of music. Yes, they all wrestle alike. The duck and clothesline, that's that's what I see. It's all a bunch of it's almost like watching a video game. I think it's video game wrestling. I really miss the territories, and I think we'll end it right there with that.